Coming to you from the Deep South, this is the Blue Collar Leadership Podcast. High impact leadership is not reserved for leaders, and it has nothing to do with your position, title, or rank. However, it does have everything to do with your character. It's time to climb to the next level and beyond, personally and professionally. Now, let's start making it happen with your host, Mac Story.
Hello and welcome to the Blue Collar Leadership Podcast. And thanks for listening. Today you're listening to one of 15 episodes that I recorded with my wife, Rhea Story. So you'll be hearing both of us speak together. And we're speaking to you about a book that we actually wrote together called Change Happens, Leading Yourself and Others Through Change. And it's based on a lot of principles that we learned along the way. And we'll share some personal stories, some things that are not in the book. But as you listen to this, if you enjoy listening to Rhea, and I'm pretty sure you will, make sure you check out her podcast, which you can find on your favorite app by searching for her name, Rhea, R-I-A, Story, S-T-O-R-Y. And also, she's all over LinkedIn. She puts out a lot of content. She's got a lot of books on leadership development and personal growth. So be sure to check out Rhea. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. All right, folks, we finally made it up to part 15 of 15. So Rhea and I are privileged to have you back listening today. And today, chapter 15 is the courage to change. We've been talking about it for the last 14 weeks, about changing. Whether it's personal change or change within your, professional change within your job, within your career. Do you have the courage to change? Talking about it is not going to do you any good. Can you actually take initiative and make changes? Because I promise you, every one of you listening knows something in your life you should have already changed. Probably know a lot of things you should have already changed. What's stopping you? Is it courage? Maybe something else. But with a lot of people, it's courage. I think I shared back in early episodes when I stopped drinking alcohol. That was a big change for me personally, but it took a lot of courage to make that change, because everyone I hung out with, everyone I associated with drank alcohol. And then once I stopped, I didn't want to hang out with those folks anymore. Not because they were bad people. I just didn't want that influence in my life. And today, especially today, I've come a long way from 2012 when I stopped drinking alcohol. But if I'm talking to you today, I want you to be 100% sober. I don't care what you do when I ain't talking to you necessarily. But if I'm talking to you, I know a lot of times people call me on the phone and I don't ever ask them, but I hope when they're talking to me, they're not under any kind of influence of any kind of drugs, alcohol. You don't know if people call you on a Friday or Saturday night, they've been working hard, or even on a weeknight, and they done had a couple of beers. I don't want to talk to people like that. I want to talk to sober people. I'm happy to talk to those same people when they're sober, but not when they're drinking alcohol. I just want clear mind. I want to know what people really think. But that's just part of my story about the alcohol. But the courage to change. A lot of times people won't change, even at work, even embracing good change at work, because of the peer pressure. People don't have the courage to change. And we talked about that a couple episodes ago, or maybe last episode. I can't remember. Rhea touched on it about the first follower. The first follower most often is the most courageous follower because they have to go first. Do you have the courage to change?
As you're talking about that, I'd love to share the quote from it's Marianne Williamson. She says, "Our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. And we ask ourselves, who am I to be brilliant, gorgeous, talented, and fabulous? Actually, who are you not to be? Your playing small doesn't serve the world. There's nothing enlightened about shrinking so that other people won't feel insecure around you. As we let our own light shine, we unconsciously give other people permission to do the same. As we are liberated from our own fear, our presence automatically liberates others." And those words to me are so powerful because I think a lot of times we do have fears relative to change. We have insecurities relative to change, but a lot of those fears or insecurities are about what other people think when we begin to change. And that's unfortunate because a lot of times we let those fears or thoughts or feelings of possibly being perceived as inferior or different or um, just strange or different than someone else. We let those hold us back from shining our light and being courageous and stepping out to be the leaders that we have potential to be the people that we have the potential to be. Because when you step out as the first follower, the first leader, right, when you have that courage to change, and it does take courage, it is absolutely going to cause some people to think of their own insecurities. And the sad thing about that is you really can't fix that. They're their limiting beliefs, not yours, right? All we are responsible for is our own. And when we talk about having the courage to change, it's having courage to say status quo is not good enough for me. I'm not going to settle for that. And some of that is sometimes realizing that as we grow, we're moving in a different direction from other people. And sometimes we have to leave those people behind, not because they're bad people or that we don't love them. We're just going a different direction than they are. Maybe they're traveling the paved superhighway to, driving down to California, but we're like, no, we're going to go explore new territory. So we take off in a different direction, right? And maybe it's an unpaved road, maybe it's a dirt road, maybe it's a wilderness and a jungle we're exploring. But there again, it doesn't mean that they're bad people necessarily or that they're going a bad direction. It just means it's not the best direction for us.
So when you're talking about that, you kind of touched on it, but the courage to change is for me, what I heard in there a little bit was so closely related to the courage to stand alone. Depending on what the change is, like for me, I've made a lot of changes where the people I was associated with, because of who I was, who we are is who we attract. So I had a lot of friends who were real similar to me, but when I started changing, those friends were not similar to me. And because I hadn't really changed yet, whatever people I was going to associate with in the future, I was not attracting those people yet. So I kind of had to leave some people behind, and I didn't have my new group to go really associate with yet. So I had to kind of go build some, I guess you want to call it street cred with the new people. I had to, truly change to become the other person. But when we're talking about the courage to change, most often it is really the courage to stand alone. Maybe for a little while, maybe for a long while. It depends on what that change is. It happens. I mean, we see it endlessly in the organizations that we support. I mean, that's one of the biggest traits that we're looking for when we support a company is courage. Who has the courage to change? Because most companies have never heard of the stuff that we teach. I mean, they've never heard of it. So unless they've got a little bit in them by accident, everything's new. And there's going to be a lot of people, in companies that don't have a lot of high impact leadership. There's a lot of rumor mill going on. There's a lot of bad mouthing behind people's back. There's all kind of stuff going on. So when you start this kind of transformation, you got to deal with that stuff. And there's a lot of people in these groups. So you may be in a group initially who's doing the bad mouthing, and then you may hear something or someone has enough influence to motivate you, inspire you to actually start to change. And then you realize the moment you start following the new way, the new people, the people who are already on board, those people who you were with talking about everybody else going to be talking about you. You got to have the courage to walk away knowing that you're going to be one of the people that gets talked about potentially.
Stephen Covey says there are 3 constants in life: change, choice, and principles. It's interesting that he puts change as the very first one, right? There are 3 constants: change, choice, and principles. And change is the first one, right? And how we respond to that is our choice. And the results of our choices really are determined by, are they in alignment with the principles? And it's powerful stuff. Again, when we have that courage to change and we realize that we we have potential to do more and to be more and to have more in life. But the problem is that most of us just let life happen
Mm,
rather than living intentionally. And to me, that's sad. It's scary. It's heartbreaking because most of us do have potential. And but we kind of just go through life letting it happen. And that means that everything that happens around us dictates whether we have a bad day or a good day, or we if we're not living life intentionally, then we're giving everything else and everyone around us the power to dictate our course and our emotions and our feelings and our thoughts and our results. And you know, that's that's scary. It just really comes down to showing the power of living life on purpose.
yep. And when we embrace the concept of creating the changes we want, we can create the life we want. But again, that takes courage. We meet a lot of people, and we've known a lot of people in our lives. We've been those people at certain points in our lives that we're not happy. We were living and growing kind of by accident. Whatever was happening just happened. You and I have been uh, pretty intentional for a lot of years, but even before we learned all this, we were fairly intentional about our growth, our professional growth especially. But we also both got very intentional about our personal growth. But there's a whole lot of people. If you're listening to this podcast right now and you don't like your job, or you don't like the industry you're in, or you don't like the situation you're in personally at home, you don't like the relationship you're in, it's going to take courage to make a change. There's so many people out there today. I talked about it before about me seeing miserable people. There's a lot of miserable people, and the reason they're miserable is because they don't have the courage to change, or they go talk to someone else who don't necessarily want to change, or who's not having a bad experience in that part of their life, and they go talk to them, and that person talks them out of changing. So that person's life isn't changing one way or the other, but your life is going to stay the same unless you have the courage to change. Courage is, when it comes to personal growth and leadership development, courage is a huge, huge character trait. I mean, it impacts almost everything. I mean, it takes courage to be humble. A lot of people, I'll use Rhea as an example when she tells her personal story about what she overcome, in life, that all that horrific abuse. Some people who have that same type story to tell, may not be the same thing, but it's just a story of what they overcome in their life. They're they're afraid to tell it because they think people are going to think less of them. They're going to think they're weak. But when Rhea shares her story and we're talking together, and I kind of teach what I'm teaching at the moment, and I'll ask the audience, how many of you heard her story and thought she was weak? Nobody. I'll say, how many heard her story, and they're silent when I say how many heard her story and thought she was weak. But when I ask how many heard her story and thought she was strong, they actually start making noise. They're in agreement. So it's sincere, it's authentic. But you can think of yourself when you've heard someone share something personal, deep that happened to them. You don't think that they're weak. Nobody thinks that they're weak. They think that they're strong. But I'm gonna tell you this: if someone hears someone being vulnerable and they think that's a weakness, that person got a lot of character work to do.
Hmm. We talk about in this last chapter of the book that when you intentionally start improving your thoughts intentionally your thoughts automatically start improving your life. And I kind of was reflecting on that earlier. In fact, I wrote down in my journal just the kind of the question to reflect on what and who, or who and what influences the quality of our thinking and the quality of our thoughts. And it's the things that we often talk about: the people around us, the environment around us, the space around us, the physical space. The food we eat can influence the quality of our thoughts, right? But it's not just the people around us, but it's their energy level and the thoughts that they have can influence and affect us and determine and influence how we're thinking too. And so it really comes back to that intentionality. Who are we intentionally allowing into our mind space right? And that's also part of the things that we watch and the things that we listen to, the things that we are reading, right? Are we raising our level of awareness? Are we improving the quality of our thinking? Because that's going to improve the quality of our circumstances. And yet, it's not like you graduate high school and someone says, hey, to improve your circumstances in life, start improving the quality of your thoughts, right? I didn't get that talk. You didn't get that talk. Nobody gets that talk. If we're fortunate, we had people who poured into us, teachers, mentors, coaches, parents, who helped us through that process, but very few people articulate it. Even if they say, hey, read some good books, expand your level of thinking. A lot of those coaches, mentors, teachers, parents will encourage you to do it, and that's powerful. But if everyone could just articulate it and explain why it's important and how it really critically can drastically improve the quality of your life and the direction of your life at an early age, how much more powerful would that be?
And that's what we do, real. I mean, that's what we talk about. That's what this whole podcast series has been about. Every one of our books, every podcast, every article, it's all about helping people learn to think with a higher level of awareness. I mean, it sounds simple. It's not simple because there's a lot of principles. When you start talking about changing your character, thinking at a higher level, and then you start saying, well, I got 10 people on my team. Or then you start thinking, well, I'm a top leader. I got 10,000 people on my team. That's why this book, this series we've been doing, you talking about leading change, it's a whole lot easier to lead people who are just following along, right? That's common sense. As soon as you start implementing change and injecting change into the entire organization, everybody starts running in a different direction, almost like stepping on an ant bed. They start going every different direction because people have all kinds of values and different goals. And so it may be one change, but it may affect 100 people in 100 different ways. Some of them in the same way, some in different ways. It just depends. So it takes a high impact leader to deal with all of that. Just like when we go in and we're leading cultural transformation, we start talking to everyone and teaching everyone in the organization about how to lead other people well, how to lead yourself well. There's all different types of resistance, really, is what we're talking about. If people embrace it, they just embrace it. That's easy. But when people resist, they may resist for 50 different reasons. And if there's one leader, he's got to deal with 50 different people with 50 different reasons. That's a lot of load to carry for a leader. So that's where the top leader has to have a lot of courage to change.
Yeah, absolutely.
I want to share a quote right here, Rhea, by Brian Tracy. Is that a good time for that?
Sure.
It's a little bit lengthy, not too long, but this is a really good quote. I remember when I first read it, I was like, man, that's a good one right there. So we're talking about the courage to change. Here's this quote by Brian Tracy. He says, there are two types of courage that you need. First, you need the courage to launch and to take action, to take a leap of faith. You need the courage to go all in without any guarantee of success and with a high possibility of failure, at least in the short term. The second type of courage that you need is called courageous patience. This is the ability to hang in there and continue working and fighting after you have gone all in and before you have yet seen any results or rewards. Many people can muster up the courage to take action toward a new goal, but when they see no immediate results, they quickly lose heart and pull back to safety and security. They don't have staying power. And those are the words of Brian Tracy. That's also another thing that we have to talk to leaders about when we start this journey. A lot of them think they're going to transform their company in one event with us for 2 hours, or go once a month and it's going to change, or for a year, or go once a month for 5 years. It doesn't matter how many times someone gets us to come into an organization. If that's all they're doing, they're not going to change. We're there to motivate and inspire people, but what we're there for is to motivate and inspire people to become engaged so that when we're not there, they're doing something. But again, we're having to try to overcome all the stuff we've been talking to you about. Many people do not have the courage to lead. Managers of people who have never truly led people. Take a book study, for instance. Managers of people, they don't want nothing to do with a book study. They don't want to be in a book study, and they most certainly don't want to lead a book study. That's reserved for high impact leaders. And so that's what we're trying to overcome, is the courage. Instead of the courage to change, it's the courage to lead. But if you're a manager of people, you've got to change and become a leader of people. And when you start learning what that's about, it takes a lot of courage.
Yeah, and it takes a lot of consistent effort over time. I love, there's a quote that I saw again by Jim Rohn. He says, "Some things you have to do every day. Eating 7 apples on a Saturday night instead of just one a day isn't going to get the job done." Right? You can't eat 7 apples on Saturday night and get the same results as eating the apple a day, to use the old analogy. And that kind of brings us to, when we change what we do, we change what we get. And it does come back to our thoughts and our thinking, but that's important because that changes how we're feeling, and those emotions dictate some of the things that we do, positively or negatively, and that influences our circumstances around us. And so it's one of those things. It says easy and it does really hard. And you and I both know that, because we both live and breathe this stuff, and we try to do it and teach it and share it with others, and we still get it wrong.
Life's still hard, isn't it?
Life is still hard, right? But the point being that the more intentionally we can apply these principles, the easier, number one, the easier it will get to continue to do that, and the more successful we are long term. And that's really what we're all striving to do. Successes, however we define them, are ours to create, right? Nobody's going to come along and give you a successful life, whatever your definition of success is. Nobody's going to come give that to you. So if you want it, you got to be willing to go get it.
Yep. So do you have the courage to change? That's today's episode is about. But saying no to something old gives you the freedom to say yes to something new. And kind of goes along with saying no to the wrong thing, frees you up to say yes to the right things. But saying no takes a lot of courage sometimes, especially when there's a ton of peer pressure. But I go back to my story when I quit drinking. When I said no to alcohol, that freed up time and resources for me. And I immediately started investing more money and more time in growth and development. Before I stopped drinking alcohol, all I had ever done was buy a book. After I stopped drinking alcohol, I started spending tens of thousands of Ria's money on growth and development. Maybe some of it was my money too, but I started spending a lot of money. Ria got engaged.
Your money is my money. What are you talking about?
Hey, people are listening. But that's true. Saying no is hard. I mean, when I quit drinking, the next time I saw my friends who were drinking, I had to say no to the drinks that they were offering me. Remember, they were not patting me on the back, congratulating me, telling me about how courageous I was to change my life. They just wanted to keep me back hanging out with them. Again, not because they're bad people, but they didn't want to change. Therefore, they didn't want me to change. But saying no to the wrong things frees up the space to say yes to the right things. And when you start saying yes to the right things, your life is going to change. There's no way that it can't. It's just a natural consequence.
Yeah, powerful stuff. So, a couple of final thoughts on this chapter. Without the courage to change, you will get left behind by those who are brave enough to take risks and fail forward toward a better future. Right? Back to our quote from John Wooden. Failure is not fatal, but failure to change can be.
Yep. And we've touched on this. If you want to get to a new level, you've got to change how you invest your time. And maybe more importantly, who you invest it with, because those people are influencing you either to remain the same or to change and grow.
Yeah. And I like to point out too, a lot of times someone will ask me, well, what if I don't know any great mentors, or what if I don't know any great people who can, help inspire me or encourage me? I'm like, read books or go. I mean, we have so much information, but you have access to the greatest minds in the world through books today, and now podcasts, and YouTube. And there's no excuse, because information is out there. You have to be willing to go get it. But if you got a Google search bar, you can figure things out. You just have to be willing to do it. And you've got access to incredible knowledge and wisdom that will help raise your level of awareness and help change the way you think and positively influence you. You start spending your time with more people like that, right? And that changes the way you think. It can't help but do so.
So Rhea, I'm going to see, I wasn't planning on this, but you just sparked a thought. So I'm going to pull up right here on my phone right quick. And it's a quote where I was reading recently from a book from John Maxwell. And I put this quote in my phone, and, I file quotes all the time. That's where quotes in our books, and my books come from my file. Your files your books have your quotes from your file, but from all of our reading. So anyway, I want to share this, and we'll wrap up today's final episode on Change Happens. Again, this is from John Maxwell. He says, when you know who you are and you know what you want, you then know the kind of people you will attract and the things you will discover. Your mind will think things that will help you get what you want. Your eyes will see things that will help you get what you want. Your heart will feel things that will help you get what you want. Your attitude will believe things that will help you get what you want. Your mouth will say things that will help you get what you want. Your actions will attract things that will help you get what you want. And again, those are the words from John Maxwell. But the key is you got to have courage. Without the courage to change, guess what? Not much is going to change.
Courage allows you to transform yourself from who you are today into who you want to become tomorrow.
Absolutely. And is that it, Rhea?
I think that's it. Let's wrap it up. Last podcast episode on this topic.
So I want to thank you for participating, Rhea. I know we wrote this book together, and
we're still married.
And we're still married, and it's a shared idea to do this podcast series together. So I hope all my listeners will go to your podcast, look up Rhea's story, and check out Rhea's stuff. Rhea's got a lot of great books. She's got a lot of journals. She's got 6 different journals, motivational, inspirational journals. So I hope you go check her out. She's got some really good stuff out there. And Rhea's also, she focuses on leadership development for women, but she does a lot one-on-one coaching for women. So if that fits you, make sure you go to rheastory.com/coaching and check out all the options she has there. And I'm going to just leave you with this last final quote. Not even going to try to say this person's name. Just know it's not me or Rhea. But the quote is, life shrinks or expands in proportion to one's courage.
Anais Nin.
Talk to you next time.
Make it happen or someone else will. It might as well be you. Are you serious about taking your career and your life to the next level and beyond? Check out Mac Story's Blue Collar Leadership Series books and others, now available on audio, along with paperback and ebooks at Amazon, iTunes, and Audible. Please visit bluecollarleadership.com to learn about Mac's books, programs, special offers, certifications, and more. Thank you for listening to the Blue Collar Leadership Podcast.